Okay, now M. Night Shyamalan just came out with a brand new movie called A Knock at the Cabin. It is based on a book that was previously written, and I love M. Night Shyamalan. I wouldn't say he's my favorite director, and I will be the first to admit that he has put out some dud films for sure. But overall, I think that his films speak for himself, which is, you know, you're going to get some good movies, especially in the horror genre, and you're going to get some bad movies. Yeah, Avatar. Just butchered it. But this is the first movie we've seen from M. Night since Old, and me personally, I liked Old. I didn't think it was the greatest movie in the entire world, and I didn't think it was the best movie in the entire world, but I thought it was an interesting take, and the premise had me at least following along the entire time, and I didn't think it was bad whatsoever. It just felt like a typical M. Night movie post all of his good movies that he made a while ago. I love Signs. That's probably my favorite alien-based horror movie outside of Alien, which I don't consider alien horror. I consider that more of a sci-fi with some horror elements to it. So when you're talking strictly horror, there is not too many alien movies, or at least great ones, and I think Signs is that best one. And The Village and The Sixth Sense are both very, very good films in my opinion. And he has some ones mixed in there that aren't necessarily horror, but are still good movies. Like Unbreakable, Split. I didn't find that to be a horror, but I think that's a really good movie within that series. And then also, like I said, Old. I think Old is really good. I wouldn't necessarily fully consider it a horror movie, more of a psychological thriller, but still, it could be considered either way. So today I'm going to be breaking down the entire film, Knock at the Cabin. There will be spoilers. I'm going to go through the entire movie, pretty much everything that happens. And at the end, I'm going to try to explain what I felt was the ending, the twist, the classic M. Night Shyamalan story to this film. Now, before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow us over on Twitter and also on Reddit. And then also check out our Etsy. We do have some shirts up there, like a new Skinamarink shirt. We have a House of the Devil shirt and many more up there. So go check those out while you're on the channel. Okay, so jumping into the film, you get a very first scene with Wynn, who is the daughter of the couple based around this story, and she is sitting out in a field playing with what looks like to be grasshoppers or locusts. She is putting them in a container. Now, I would like to find some kind of symbolism behind this scene, but I will have to probably watch it again to try to dig deep and to really find some symbolism on the entire movie of what has to do with her collecting these bugs. Dave Bautista's character in this is named Leonard, and he perceives to come off as a huge creep. He sits down and tries to talk to her, asking her all of these questions, saying that they need to be friends, and asking her questions about her parents. And it just comes off as just, like I said, creepy. So Wynn picks up on this fairly quickly, and she happens to see the other strangers walking around the woods behind him. Now, Leonard does give her some warnings to let her know that they are going to come into the house and to let their parents know. And that's kind of the first scene that you get that, like, really makes you realize that this movie is kind of just jumping in the deep end right off the bat. There's no lead in. There's no real anything to make you feel like you are learning about these characters very much, which that comes into play later on. You get to see a little bit of a backstory, but there's not a lot. It just kind of happens all at once right at the very beginning of the movie. Now, Wynn proceeds to run inside and warn her dads, just like Leonard told her to do. They don't really believe her until they start hearing them trying to break into the house. Now, some proceed to get into the house, and they're fighting Eric and Andrew, who are Wynn's dads. Then you just get to see Ron Weasley just pretty much get the shit beat out of him and grow tired.
That was exhausting, Harry. I'm off to bed. See you later.
That's a little joke. Redmond, who is his character in the movie, is played by Rupert Grint. He was Ron Weasley in the Harry Potter series. And like I said, he does get tired and get beat up, sort of. And that's when everybody fully enters the cabin. Now, in this process, Eric does get a concussion, and Leonard is able to calm everybody down while they also strap Eric and Andrew into chairs. Wynn is kind of left out to, I don't know, explorer or something. I don't know why they didn't decide to tie Wynn up. I don't know if it's just because she was a child. They didn't feel comfortable with tying her up, but she's kind of left alone most of the movie and not really tried to be convinced that all of this is happening. They kind of just leave her alone, and that comes back to bite him in the ass later on in the movie. While all of this is happening, they have Andrew and Eric tied up. That's when the four people proceed to tell them that the apocalypse is coming, and they must kill one of their family members to be able to prevent the apocalypse. So that means that Eric, Andrew, and Wynn would have to kill one of them. So they would have to make a decision and kill one of them to be able to prevent the apocalypse. Now, obviously, they're not feeling this at all. They think they're crazy. They think they're wrong. They said you're religious fanatics. And then also, you're kind of getting these flashbacks with Eric and Andrew's backstory. Like I was saying, you didn't really get it at the beginning of the movie, so they kind of puts flashbacks in there a few times to give you a little bit of an idea about their backstory, which, I mean, I don't fully understand. I mean, I totally get shedding light on homophobia, and, you know, this is a gay couple who is married and has a child, and there's a lot of stereotypes that come with that. There's a lot of hate and negativity that comes with that. So I do understand placing that stuff into the movie, but I'm not really sure how it has anything to do with the story, having some of the flashbacks that really contribute nothing to the story. I feel like they could have pulled that in a little bit more into the main storyline. They did bring up a few times about, oh, you guys are only doing this because we are gay, and Leonard reassured them that this has nothing to do with your guys' sexuality. It has everything to do with the apocalypse, and you were not picked for a certain reason. You were just pretty much here like the strangers, essentially. Then you get into the point where they are forced to make a decision, and at that point, everybody is introducing themselves. Now, Leonard introduces himself as a elementary school or a middle school teacher. Nikki is a nurse. Abby, a chef. And then Redmond, who I can't remember what he did. I don't think he really said what he did. He might have, and I might have just forgotten it, but in that scene when he's supposed to introduce himself, he's just kind of being a dick the entire time. So I don't think that he said what he did, but I can't fully remember. After introducing themselves, they do explain that this is the time where you guys need to make a decision and figure out which one of you guys are going to kill to prevent the apocalypse from happening. Obviously, the family says no, they're not going to do it. And then it is explained to them that since they said no, one of the four members who showed up to the house will have to die to bring upon a plague. And this will continue on throughout the movie if they say no. Now, the first one that was killed was Redmond. And during the scene, Redmond gets down on the ground. He's on his knees. He puts a bag over his head. He's crying. He's saying he's scared. And right before he's killed, this little apparition, it's like this little light, is kind of shining and moving around Redmond's head. And Andrew happens to see that, but doesn't mention anything about it. Kind of just thinks that he is concussed because of what happened to him earlier. Now, Redmond proceeds to get killed. And after that, they turn on the TV and they show the family that a massive earthquake happened right off the coast of Washington and Oregon, and it was going to cause this huge tidal wave that was going to hit the West Coast and completely demolish those cities. One thing I have to point out is that there's a scene in the movie where it shows the tidal wave, and it's just really bad. It's super cheesy, CGI looking, and I just can't ignore it. I have to point it out there. That was like the first bad thing I saw in the movie and was just like, oh God, this is cringy. I wish he wouldn't have put this in here, but it is M. Night. Unfortunately, he does have some questionable decisions in some of his movies, and this was one of them. Now, Andrew proceeds to say that it's all bullshit. He doesn't believe it. He actually remembers Redmond from a interaction they had in their past. They believe that Redmond was at a bar and attacked them at some point for supposedly being gay. And he also points out the fact that The earthquake and the warning for that actually came out days before they were ever in the cabin or in this situation. So the members of this religious cult, to say, would have already known about this ahead of time because it was already on the news ready to go. Now, there's not much more that happens in a certain amount of time. There's a lot of talking, a lot of dialogue. Andrew goes into the bathroom to get his head fixed. And then it comes up to another point where they have to say that somebody has to be killed again. And you guys will have to make that sacrifice. And again, the family says no. So that means another one of these members will have to die to bring upon another plague, apparently. And that was Abby, who I said was the chef, and then she does reveal that she has a child, trying to get some sympathy points, but it doesn't work, and she ends up being killed. And again, this brings upon another supposed plague, which was sickness. Again, they turn on the TV, and they're seeing that this virus is spreading across certain points of the world, making everybody deadly sick. But still, the family just doesn't believe it. At this point, there's only 2 cult members left, which is Dave Bautista's character, Leonard, and Nikki, who I said was the nurse. Now, at some point, Wynn gets away and is able to find a knife. Like I said, again, I don't know why she wasn't tied up. I'm guessing because she was a child, but that gave her the advantage of finding something to help the dads escape. And that's exactly what happens. And Andrew ends up getting into this sort of weird, like, fight with Leonard, which, I mean, if you've seen Dave Bautista, the dude is massive. So in the realm of everything, I don't see how he would have even defended himself, but I don't think that Leonard wanted to hurt him. And then while that is happening, Eric gets outside, is able to get a gun out of the SUV and attempt to shoot Nikki, which doesn't work. Nikki ends up hitting him in the leg and hurting his leg really bad. But they end up back inside. Nikki is shot and killed, so that is the 3rd member gone and leaving only 1 more member, which was Leonard. Now, there's a whole sequence where everything's just kind of happening at once. They're trying to escape. Leonard doesn't want to. They put Leonard in the bathroom. Leonard gets out of the bathroom. Leonard gets back in, gets a hold of the gun, and proceeds to tell them that, look, you guys have to do this stuff. Look what's happening. And they turn back on the TV because the 3rd cult member died. It did bring upon another plague, and that was planes just flying out of the sky. It looked like the planes had lost all control, and all over the world, planes were just crashing everywhere into the ground. And that's when the family starts to understand that, like, this possibly could be real. But Eric doesn't want to believe it. Andrew is the one trying to convince him, saying, hey, this possibly could be true. Look at all this stuff happening. But Eric just refuses to admit that any of this has to do with a cult, and it has to all be a coincidence, and they just need to get out of there. At this point, Leonard tells them, look, there's nothing else we can do. If you guys won't make a decision to kill one of you, then I will have to kill myself and bring upon the 4th plague, and that will bring in the apocalypse essentially, and you guys will have to make a decision within a few minutes of me killing myself to prevent the apocalypse from happening. So they do have a window to prevent anything from happening, but it has to be within a few minutes of Leonard dying. And so Leonard proceeds to slit his own throat, and then you start to see the skies darken, thunder, lightning, and then that's when it really hits both of them that, like, holy crap, this is actually happening. Now, this isn't a normal M. Night twist. Most of the time what happens in M. Night movies are you're believed to think something's happening the entire time, and at the end, it's completely different. Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis being dead the entire time. The Village with it being set in present day the entire time. Signs, I guess that they didn't like water. I guess that's what it was. It would have been. This is when they come to their senses, and Andrew looks at Eric and says, don't you understand? These people are not real people. These people are real people on Earth as far as their bodies and their lives, but these people were put together from a higher power, and they are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And that's the big twist. So it's not a traditional twist where he completely flips everything 180. It is a twist as far as we are going to tell you this outlandish thing that the apocalypse is going to happen and one of you have to die. Then you spend most of the movie trying to figure out whether or not the group is telling the truth or not. And there's some times where you're like, they're obviously full of it because there are things that they already knew was going to happen. The whole Redmond thing about how they recognized him, how they believe that he attacked them. And so you're kind of caught in between the entire movie going, is this actually happening, or is it all made up and these people are just psychos? Well, it ends up that they are the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And to explain that better, the four horsemen of the apocalypse are the bringers of the apocalypse in biblical standards. Now, there are representations of the four horsemen of the apocalypse in different cultures, not just within Christianity, but within other religions and cultures as well. I didn't put two and two together that there were four of them, so this was like a big break for me. I was just like, holy crap, like I didn't even think about them being the four horsemen of the apocalypse. I just literally thought that they were religious fanatics or cult members, and when he said that they were the four horsemen of the apocalypse, I was like, holy crap, that makes sense, because they would be warning them. And then each one sort of represents what horsemen that they are. Leonard represents the white horse, which was commonly referred to as Jesus and his teachings and the spread of the gospel. And Leonard, as we know, was a teacher. So that makes sense why Leonard would be represented of the white horse. Now, Redmond is the representation of the red horse. Now, outside of the fact that Rupert Grint has red hair, he is very confrontational the entire time. He seems violent. He did have that past where supposedly he attacked the couple, and the red horse represents war. So that would make sense why Redmond would be the red horse. Now, Abby, the chef I mentioned, she represents the black horse, which is famine. It's not too much to dig into this one or subliminal messaging having to do with it. And then Nikki is the pale horse, which is representative of death. She is a nurse. She works in a hospital. She's probably dealt with death quite a bit, so it would make sense why she would be the pale horse. Now, again, that covers those four and what they represent in this film, and that's what I believe is the true meaning of this film, is those four being the four horsemen of the apocalypse. It's safe to say you know exactly what happens. I mean, they don't let the apocalypse happen. Eric ends up killing Andrew because Andrew said that he saw the vision, he saw the spirit over top of Redmond's head when Redmond was killed, and that gave him peace and that he was ready to go. That way the entire world could be saved. Eric kills him. He finds Wynn in the treehouse. They go to a diner and they sit and watch TV as everybody's surrounded around it, and all the plagues stop happening. The wave went away, the sickness went away, the airplanes stopped falling out of the sky, the storms went away, and it was like everything just went back to normal. So they were right the entire time. They were the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and it's not a huge twist, but I liked it. Because like I said, I didn't pick up on the fact that they were the four horsemen of the apocalypse. I thought they were just four people. It was nice kind of trying to decide whether they were actually crazy or whether they were telling the truth. And there's little bits and pieces, like I said, throughout that will kind of make you sway either direction. So it's nice to have a definitive answer at the end of it about why all of this happened. So overall, I would say it's okay. I would put it around the same realm as Old. Not the best M. Night movie ever, not the worst, kind of in the middle, an okay movie, a good time. If you like suspense, if you like a little bit of a story, if you like more of religious toned movies, you will like it. It definitely has some parts that I said, really feed into trying to show homophobia, which, like I said, is completely fine. I'm fine with social commentary films. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I just wish it would have been tied in a little bit more to the story rather than being one-off kind of flashbacks. And let's be honest, it's an M. Night movie. Acting's not going to be great. It never is in his movies. I mean, even his greatest movies, like The Sixth Sense and like Signs, have parts in them where the acting is just questionable. But that's part of M. Night that I do like, is the characters kind of feel more real life because they're so bad at acting. There's parts in the script that are lines that are written that are like, that come off weird in a movie, but when you think about it in the sense of reality, they don't sound too weird. It kind of just sounds like a normal person talking. What comes to mind is that scene in the pharmacy in Signs, when Mel Gibson's character is talking to the girl behind the desk, and she's just very scared and she keeps confessing sins to him. That scene felt very weird. Like, the writing was just like, not great. But for some reason, I feel like that's a normal conversation, or it feels like real conversation that people would have in real life. And that's one thing I like about M. Night. Really, really love the ending though. But like I said, it's an okay movie. It's a typical M. Night movie. So if you don't like his movies, I don't think you'll like it. But if you like M. Night movies, you will like it. If you've already seen it, comment down below and let me know what you thought about it. And we will be back on Friday with another horror video.